A light breeze was passing through the deserted park, lifting the dry leaves into small whirlwinds under a gray and threatening sky. Luca, a 3-year-old boy blind from birth, was playing quietly near his mother. The park, surrounded by a dense forest, seemed like a safe place to spend the afternoon. But in an instant, everything changed. Luca's mother had become distracted while answering the phone, lowering her gaze for just a few seconds. When she looked up again, the child was no longer beside her. Her voice cracked in panic. "Luca, where are you?" The little boy, curious about a distant sound, had wandered off among the trees, unaware of the danger. Alone and vulnerable, he began to feel the absence of his mother. With his heart pounding, he started calling her, "Mom! Help!" But in the thick of the trees, his voice got lost, overwhelmed by the sound of the leaves and the wind. He had no idea where he was or which direction to take. Fear enveloped him, his outstretched hands searching for a point of reference, but all around him was emptiness. Just when it seemed that little Luca was completely abandoned, an unexpected presence appeared. A stray dog, with rough fur and deep eyes, emerged from behind a bush. It was thin, but in its movements, there was a determination that conveyed something unique. The dog watched the boy, as if understanding his desperate situation. The dog barked once, in a low and firm tone. Luca, hearing the sound, froze. There was something in that bark that didn't frighten him but reassured him. As if that mysterious animal were there to help him. The dog slowly approached, brushing the boy's hand with its nose, and Luca felt a strange sense of comfort. "Who are you?" Luca whispered. The unexpected meeting between the boy and the dog marked the beginning of something incredible. While the mother continued searching desperately for her son, the stray dog seemed to have a plan. Luca's fate was now in its paws. Luca, still disoriented and scared, felt the warmth of the dog's breath near his hand. He couldn't see its appearance, but he sensed a reassuring and almost protective presence. The dog let out a soft whine, as if inviting him to follow. Somehow, the boy understood the message. "Do you want to help me?" Luca asked, his voice trembling. The dog barked again, this time with a decisive tone, and began walking slowly, stopping every few steps to make sure the boy was following. Luca clung to the trust that the mysterious animal inspired in him and stretched out his hand, following the sound of its paws on the ground. Meanwhile, Luca's mother, Francesca, was wandering through the park, calling for her son. Her heart was a turmoil of fear and guilt. Every passing second seemed like an eternity. Several people in the park had joined her search, but no one had seen the boy. The dog suddenly stopped, its body stiffening. A sudden noise came from the underbrush, the crackling of broken branches. The boy, unaware of the danger, kept moving forward, but the dog positioned itself between him and the source of the sound, growling low. Suddenly, a large deer emerged from the dense trees, as frightened as they were. The animal stopped for a moment, then darted away, disappearing into the bushes. The dog, after ensuring the danger had passed, returned to Luca and licked his hand, as if to reassure him. "What was it?" Luca asked, sensing the dog had protected him. But the dog simply nudged him gently with its nose, guiding him again toward a safe direction. One of the men helping with the search noticed small footprints in the wet ground. Francesca clung to that hope and started following the tracks. "Luca, are you there?" she cried, her voice breaking. The dog, hearing the call, stopped and barked loudly, a sound that seemed to answer the boy's mother. "Mom!" Luca cried, recognizing her voice. But they were still not out of danger. Between the child and the mother was a small stream, with unusually swift waters due to the recent rains. Luca was too close to the edge and didn't realize it. The dog, sensing the danger, moved quickly. It positioned itself between Luca and the stream, barking furiously to attract the attention of the mother and rescuers. Francesca, guided by the sound, arrived just in time to see the dog gently push Luca back with its nose, moving him away from the slippery edge. Francesca ran to her son, tears streaming down her face. She grabbed him and hugged him tightly, still trembling from the fear. "Thank God, Luca. You're safe." Then she turned toward the dog, which was watching the scene with an almost satisfied expression. Francesca kneeled and reached out to him. "Thank you. I don't know who you are, but you saved my child." The dog looked at her, wagging its tail slightly, but maintaining a distant air, almost as if it knew its mission was not yet over. Francesca, still kneeling beside Luca, kept looking at the dog in disbelief. There was something extraordinary about this stray. It didn't act like an ordinary animal, but like a guardian sent specifically to protect her son. As she tried to reassure Luca, the dog perked up its ears, suddenly jumping to its feet. A rustling came from the underbrush ahead. Francesca stiffened, her protective instincts kicking in. "What is it?" she whispered, clutching the child. The dog positioned itself in front of them, its body as taut as a violin string. Then it barked loudly, the sound echoing through the trees. The mother, scared but determined, picked up Luca and began following the dog, which seemed intent on taking them away from the danger. As they moved through the forest paths, Francesca began to hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps. They were not alone. She turned around but saw nothing through the thick trees. The dog, however, was growling softly, maintaining a defensive stance. "Let's get out of here, quickly," she whispered, picking up the pace. Suddenly, a man emerged from the shadows. He was a hunter, with a rifle slung over his shoulder. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" he asked, his tone ambiguous. Francesca didn't respond immediately, too frightened. "Yes, we're just trying to get out of the park," she finally answered, her voice unsure. The hunter stared at her for a moment, then his eyes fell on the dog. "Is that your dog?" he asked, his tone too curious. Francesca hesitated. "No, but it saved my son." The hunter smiled faintly, but there was no kindness in his eyes. "Strange to find a dog like that around here. He could be useful." The dog, sensing something was wrong, quickly moved in front of Francesca and Luca, growling fiercely. The hunter took a step back, surprised by the animal's aggression. "I didn't mean any harm," he said, raising his hands, but Francesca didn't trust him. The dog continued to push them forward, guiding them toward the exit of the woods. Francesca felt increasingly safe following the animal, which seemed to have an unshakable determination. Luca, meanwhile, had calmed down in her arms. "Mom, he's an angel," the child whispered innocently. Luca's words echoed in Francesca's heart. How could an abandoned animal show so much courage and intelligence? A few minutes later, they reached a more open path, where they finally spotted some lights in the distance. It was the park exit. Francesca turned toward the dog and knelt beside him. "I don't know who you are or where you come from, but we owe you everything." "Thank you." The dog barked softly, wagging its tail gently. Just as Francesca thought their adventure was over, Luca knelt next to the dog, extending his small hands toward him. The dog approached, allowing Luca to stroke his muzzle. Luca laughed, a clear sound that brought a bit of light to that tense afternoon. "Can I keep him, Mom?" "He's my angel." Francesca hesitated for a moment, but deep inside, she already knew the answer. This dog was not simply a stray. He had become part of their family. After finally leaving the forest, Francesca, Luca, and the dog found themselves on the main road leading to the park's parking lot. The sunset light illuminated the path, bringing with it a sense of relief. But the calm didn't last long. The dog suddenly stopped, its ears perked. It began barking toward the opposite side of the road, its body stiff as a statue. Francesca, who had just let her guard down, felt a shiver run down her spine. "What's going on, friend?" she whispered, following the dog's gaze. From behind a bush, another figure appeared. It was the same hunter they had encountered earlier, but this time his face showed a different expression. He had put down his rifle, but was holding a small flashlight, aiming it directly at them. "Ma'am, I didn't mean to scare you earlier," he said in a calm voice, but one filled with tension. "That dog, does it belong to someone?" Francesca stood up, holding Luca's hand tightly. I don't know. It saved my son. The hunter took a step forward, studying the dog. This is no ordinary dog. I've never seen one like it around here, but it looks trained. It might have escaped from a special place, or belonged to someone looking for it. Francesca's heart sank. What if the dog wasn't really a stray? Maybe he had a family, or someone who was desperately searching for him. But before she could answer, the dog growled again, positioning itself between her and the man. The hunter stopped, raising his hands to calm the dog. All right. I don't mean any harm, he said with an uncertain smile. Francesca started to relax, but the hunter added something that sent a chill through her. You know, a few months ago, a truck carrying animals was involved in an accident near this area. Some of those dogs escaped, and they say one of them was special, trained for rescue missions. Francesca's heart raced. Could it be true? Was this dog really a hero that had escaped from an accident? She looked at the animal, who now seemed calm but always vigilant, and began to wonder. How do you know that? She asked, her voice trembling. The hunter shrugged. I know because I work with a rescue team. I didn't want to scare you, but when I saw that dog, well, it seemed familiar. Francesca didn't know what to think. But Luca was determined. He didn't escape, Mom. He's here for us. He's my angel. As they spoke, a car slowly approached down the road. The headlights illuminated the scene, and Francesca noticed there was a man inside who seemed to be looking for something. The dog turned toward the car, barking loudly. The car stopped beside them, and the window rolled down. That's Max, the man exclaimed. Francesca looked at him in confusion. Max? You know him? Yes. He's the dog I lost during that accident the hunter was talking about. He's a trained rescue dog, but we haven't found him since the accident. The dog slowly approached the car, looking at the man with attentive eyes. But instead of jumping in or immediately recognizing him, he returned to Luca's side, positioning himself next to him as if to protect the child. The man got out of the car and knelt before the dog, trying to get his attention. Max, it's me. Come home. The dog looked at him but stayed by Luca's side. Francesca felt torn. If the dog truly belonged to that man, he had the right to take him back. But on the other hand, the bond that had formed with Luca was undeniable. I don't know, Francesca said, looking at the dog. He saved my son. Maybe he's here for a reason. The parking lot, now bathed in the evening twilight, had become the scene of an emotional confrontation. Francesca, the man who claimed to be the dog's owner, and the hunter were all standing still, while the dog remained by Luca's side, almost as if to show where his place was. Luca, with his innocence, reached out a hand toward the dog and said, You'll stay with me, right? Don't go away. Francesca watched the scene with a heavy heart. She couldn't ignore the deep bond the dog had developed with her son, but at the same time, the man in front of her seemed genuinely attached to the animal. I don't want to cause any problems, the man said in a softer tone. Max is a trained dog, and he's always been special. If he's chosen to stay with your son, there's a reason. But I just want to make sure you know he's not a stray. He's been with me for years, and I've been desperately searching for him since he disappeared. Francesca felt torn. The dog, who kept watching the man attentively, seemed conflicted too. For a moment, he approached the man, sniffed him, and barked softly, as if to recognize him. But immediately after, he returned to Luca's side, sitting next to the child as if to say, Now my mission is here. The hunter, who had been silent up until then, intervened with a reflection. You know, animals have a special instinct. Max has chosen to stay with this boy, maybe because he knows he's needed here. But it's also true that, if he's really a trained dog, he could help many other people. These words struck Francesca deeply. She knelt beside the dog and stroked his head. You're really a hero, you know that? But I don't know what the right thing to do is for you. Luca interrupted the moment, hugging the dog. Mom, he doesn't want to leave. He saved me. He's my friend." The man, seeing Luca's emotion and the evident bond between the child and the dog, stepped back. "Maybe we can find a solution," he said, looking at Francesca. "I could leave him with you for a while and come back to visit him. It's clear that right now, he feels his place is here." Francesca was surprised by those words. She hadn't expected the man to be willing to part with the dog, even temporarily. "That would be wonderful," she said, feeling a wave of relief. "I don't want to take something precious from you, but this dog has done so much for us today. We can't just let him go." The man nodded slowly. "Max has always been an extraordinary animal. If he's chosen you, there's a reason. But I'd just like to be able to see him again." In the following minutes, while the hunter stepped away to leave them to discuss, Luca and the dog continued to play together in the parking lot. The child laughed, stroking the animal's fur, and seemed to have forgotten all the fear he had just felt. Francesca watched the scene with a mix of joy and relief. The dog wasn't just a savior for Luca, but seemed to have brought a sense of hope and protection into their lives. "Maybe he's truly a gift," she thought to herself. The man who claimed to be the dog's owner approached once more, this time with a more serene smile. "I'll leave you my number. If you need help with him, call me. But promise me you'll take care of him like he deserves." Francesca nodded. "You can count on it. We'll do everything we can for him." In the days following the incredible meeting, Francesca and Luca brought the dog, who they now officially called Max, into their daily life. Max quickly adapted, showing not only affection but also extraordinary intelligence. However, not everything went smoothly. One evening, while Francesca was putting Luca to bed, the dog started acting strangely. He was pacing back and forth in front of the living room window, barking outside. Francesca pulled back the curtains to see what was troubling him, but saw nothing. "What's wrong, Max?" she asked, stroking him to calm him down. Max stopped barking but remained still, staring at a spot in the darkness. It was as if he sensed something that Francesca couldn't perceive. Despite her unease, she decided to ignore the dog's behavior, thinking it was just nervousness. But the next morning, as she walked Luca to daycare, Francesca noticed a suspicious man who seemed to be following them. He had a furtive air and was trying not to draw attention, but Max noticed him immediately. The dog positioned himself between the man and Francesca, growling with a ferocity he had never shown before. "Is everything okay?" Francesca asked the man, trying to remain calm. The man raised his hands, pretending innocence. "Oh, excuse me. I just noticed that dog. He looks like one I was looking for." Francesca eyed him suspiciously, holding Luca's hand tightly. "I don't know what you're talking about, but this dog is with us now." The man nodded with an enigmatic smile and slowly walked away. Max continued to stare at him until he was completely out of sight. Francesca couldn't ignore the unease that had crept into her heart. That evening, Francesca decided to call the man who had claimed to be Max's owner. She told him about the encounter with the suspicious man and the dog's unusual behavior. "Do you think someone's trying to take him back?" she asked, worried. "I am not sure," the man replied, his voice tense. "But it's possible. Max isn't an ordinary dog, and if someone knows how special he is, they might want him for not so noble purposes." Francesca shuddered. She didn't want to imagine that someone could have ill intentions toward Max, especially now that he had become part of their family. "I'll keep an eye out," she said finally. "But I won't let anyone take him away." Meanwhile, the hunter they had met in the park reached out again. Upon hearing about the situation, he offered his help. "I know how to track suspicious people," he said seriously. "If that man is trying to steal the dog, we can find out." Francesca hesitated, unsure if she should fully trust him. But Max seemed to appreciate the hunter's presence, which was unusual for the dog. She decided to accept the help, hoping it would be useful. That same night, Francesca heard a noise outside the door. Her heart skipped a beat as she approached to check. Max was already there, standing in front of the door, growling softly. Francesca peered through the peephole and saw a shadowy figure trying to force the lock. "Who's there?" she shouted, trying to stay calm. The figure stopped for a moment, then disappeared into the darkness. Max barked furiously, scratching the door as if chasing the intruder. Francesca immediately called the hunter and told him what had happened. "This is serious," the man said. "You need to file a report and set up security cameras. I'll help you protect Max." Francesca nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. She wouldn't let anyone endanger her family or the dog that had saved her son. Despite the tension, Max seemed more protective than ever. He stayed close to Luca, monitoring every movement around them. Luca, for his part, seemed to find in the dog an endless source of comfort. "Max is my hero," he often said, gently petting him. Francesca knew that the bond between the dog and the child was special, but now it was clear that Max would give his life to protect them. The next morning, Francesca woke with a sense of unease that she couldn't shake. The events of the previous night continued to haunt her. Looking out the window, she saw Max sitting on the lawn, his gaze fixed on the edge of their garden. He was vigilant, as if waiting for something or someone. As she prepared breakfast for Luca, a familiar car pulled up in front of the house. It was the hunter. He got out of the vehicle with a serious expression, carrying some documents and an electronic device. "I've done some research," he said, entering with purposeful steps. "And I think there are more people involved in this matter." Francesca looked at him with concern. "What do you mean?" The hunter explained that he had traced some suspicious activities in the area. The man they had seen in the park was part of an organization looking to recover trained animals to sell them illegally. Max, with his extraordinary abilities, was likely one of the main targets. "They must have heard about the truck accident," he continued. "And now they're desperately searching for him." Francesca felt frozen. "What can we do to protect him?" "First of all, I've installed security cameras around the house," the hunter said, showing the device he had brought with him. "And we need to keep a close watch on Max. Never leave him alone." That evening, after putting Luca to bed, Francesca sat with Max beside her. She stroked the dog slowly, lost in her thoughts. She had developed such a strong bond with him, and seeing him so protective of Luca gave her a sense of security she hadn't felt in years. But now, with this new threat emerging, she wondered if she was doing the right thing. Max deserved a peaceful life, free from danger, and maybe staying with them wasn't the best solution for him. "What should I do, Max?" she murmured, looking into his eyes. The dog responded by laying his head on her lap, almost as if to reassure her that his place was here, with them. The following day, the man who had claimed to be Max's owner came to visit again. He brought some documents that proved Max had been originally trained as a rescue dog for an international rescue team. "These dogs are extraordinary," he explained. "They're trained to help in emergency situations, and Max is one of the best we've ever had. But if you want to keep him, I won't stop you. It seems he's found a new mission with you." Francesca was silent for a moment, her heart torn. On one hand, she knew Max had a special gift, and he could save more lives. On the other hand, the bond with Luca was now inseparable. "I need to think about it," she finally said. That night, another shadow moved around the house. The cameras installed by the hunter picked up movement, and a discreet alarm alerted Francesca. She jumped up and saw Max already in position in front of the door. When Francesca looked at the footage, she saw two men with flashlights trying to approach the house. One of them seemed to be the same man they had met in the park. She immediately called the hunter and the man who had claimed to be Max's owner. They both arrived quickly, and the two suspicious men fled before they could be confronted. The next morning, Francesca decided it was time to act. She spoke to Luca, explaining that Max was special and that some bad people wanted to take him away. "But they can't," Luca protested, tears in his eyes. "Max is my friend." Francesca hugged him tightly. "I know, sweetheart. We'll do everything we can to protect him. But it might be necessary to